You're listening to Civic Media. You can tune into any of our live shows on any radio station across the state with the Civic Media app. Find us in your phone's app store and listen anytime, anywhere.
Live across Wisconsin on Civic Media, you're listening to Mornings with Pat Kreitlow, powered by Up North News. Now, from our Lake Wissota studio, here is the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Kreitlow.
Well, hey there, Wisconsin. Good morning. It is 6:06. It's a Thursday morning, August 21st, 2025, and it is indeed another beautiful morning to have you here up north, back live on Lake Wissota from wherever you're spending your mornings, listening across the Civic Media Radio Network, or catching us on YouTube, Facebook, podcast, the app, the website, however you did it. We're glad you did it. Thanks for spending your Thursday morning right here. I got a question for you. What do you know about Wisconsin lieutenant governors? I mean, here, we'll do a little trivia. Who was the lieutenant governor for Tommy Thompson? How about for Jim Doyle? Remember Scott Walker? Who was his lieutenant governor? How about Tony Evers? That's a trick question. Who was his governor in his first term, or lieutenant governor in the first term? How about the second term, the one right now? Who's the current lieutenant governor? We'll talk all about that in a couple of minutes because we have a candidate for lieutenant governor joining us during our 7 o'clock hour. Sarah Godlewski, Wisconsin Secretary of State, former state treasurer, is looking to add a third constitutional office to her resume and serve as lieutenant governor for Wisconsin next year. That's because the current lieutenant governor, I'm going to give away one of the answers here, Sarah Rodriguez, the current lieutenant governor under Tony Evers, is now a candidate for governor next year, with Tony Evers not seeking a third term. So we'll ask Sarah Godlewski a bit more about why she's seeking the lieutenant governor role coming up this morning, and talk more about those past lieutenant governors. We'll see which ones you remember. So all of that is coming up. We'll also check in with Todd Alba. He was in Wisconsin Rapids yesterday, just as I was, for the WFHR 85th anniversary celebration. So we'll talk about his time at the parking lot party up there at the radio station. We'll also talk about back in the state capitol how Governor Tony Evers is not wasting any time changing the way business is done at the Capitol. Now that the state Supreme Court has struck down one of the many ways that Republicans in the legislature have been obstructing him from doing his job, implementing laws and rules, things like that. We'll get a rundown of this weekend's Wisconsin events with Cherita Booker. We'll replay our conversation with Dan Shafer about a very liberal U.S. senator coming to western Wisconsin soon to campaign for a congressional candidate already endorsed by so-called blue dog Democrats. And economic data shows the Trump presidency is doing exactly what experts had warned us about. There is a widening gap between the super rich and the rest of us. Trump's trade war has weakened the U.S. dollar. Consumers are paying the price with higher prices on store shelves, not lower, as Trump had promised. We'll talk about all that with Sean O'Malley about your money in the markets. We'll talk to Joe Zepecki, Chad Holmes as well, Brittany Merlot's forecast too. In fact, Ms. Merlot has given us a state forecast for today that says that summer sun will stay bright this week. A completely different air mass will take over for the weekend. It will be bringing in breezy fall-like temps and maybe sparking up some rain before it arrives. Her state forecast for today is short and sweet. Partly sunny and pleasant, highs 75 to 80, a southeast wind at 5 to 10. Then for tonight, increasing clouds, lows in the upper 50s to low 60s, and a light south wind. That's the state forecast. She'll tell us much more about that just under an hour from now. Along the way, of course, we'd love to have your comments and your feedback. Several different ways to do that. The Civic Media app would be the best way, because that way we see it directly here as you text things to us. Pull up one of the radio stations on the Civic Media app, use the text feature or the voice note feature and record a little message to us, or head over to the YouTube or Facebook pages and put something in that way as well. Or you can email us, radio@upnorthnewswi.com. Again, upnorthnewswi.com is the home for Up North News, a separate entity from Civic Media. It's just about 6:11. Let's check in with Parker Olson, who produces this fine little program down in Madison Studio A2. Mr. Olson, how are you?
Doing pretty good, Pat. I'm having a good time.
My God, your voice got so high there. You must really be in a good mood today. Just doing really good. Yeah, no, that's great.
I feel fine. Yeah.
Oh, gee, careful there. These are new headphones. We don't want to hurt these things.
Sorry.
That's all right. I think we both are a little more well rested. You know, travel days are always interesting days. I mean, I hit the wall hard yesterday when I got home.
Bet. Yeah.
You know, I mean, look, it's good to be out and about. It's good to see other folks like we did in Wisconsin Rapids. But you know, after a night in a hotel and getting back to your own bed, there's nothing like it. It's a good thing.
Your own bed is one of those special things in life.
Yeah. So we've got a lawn that we had to do some aerating for it. So now we need to kind of keep it wet because you get those little dirt plugs,
Yeah.
When you're doing the lawn. And then you've got to water them so that those little dirt plugs kind of, go back into the ground and everything. But we don't sprinkle the lawn very much. We don't water our lawn very much. We're up on the lake here. We don't kind of have that suburban mentality where every square inch of the lawn has to be perfect,
Sure.
And it's fine. I mean, it's perfectly fine. We just don't go overboard with it.
Yeah.
But that also includes, because we don't use the sprinkler a lot, that when I finally had to use it, first off, I'd take a lot of dust off of it. It had been sitting in the garage for a little bit here, and it clearly had aged a little bit. It was kind of tough to connect the hose and everything. And by the time I got it done, I mean, water is spraying in 18 different directions because
that's not quite what you want, I'm guessing.
It had collected a little dirt and dust and everything else. And eventually we got it done. And we'll continue moving the sprinkler around today. But it's just funny because up and down the street, there are people who have paid a lot of money for these nice sprinkler systems. There's heads that are spaced, every so far apart, and then they're just doing their thing. The lawns are perfect. And then they see either me or Sherry trudging our hose with our one little old sprinkler. Thunk. We'll just put it here, see what it does. Is it sprinkling in a full circle? Is that a quarter circle? Is that a crescent? What exactly are they doing over there?
It's very spotty.
Sure. Yeah, very spotty. Like, can they not? Do we need to take up a collection and get them a second sprinkler? No, we're fine. This is how we want it.
Well, our neighbors who actually just moved out, so I can say this without fear of them hearing and then saying something to me. They had been watering their lawn, and mind you, Madison is like gotten a ton of rain, as you know, as has most of the state.
Yeah.
They water their lawn like every night. During the night, they do it. And they were complaining about not being able to grow grass. I'm like, I don't think that's true. Your lawn looks fine.
There's some other kind of issue, maybe it was, maybe their house and their lawn are over, what was once a battery factory or something. But there's got to be something in the soil. If you're watering that often and you're still not able to grow grass. My favorite is going anywhere in the rain. And in the rain, you're seeing that somebody's automatic sprinkler system still comes on anyway. Let's say it's 5:30 in the morning and it's raining and you're seeing the sprinklers just going to town and you're like, I'm glad we don't pay for water here. We've got a well and that's fine. But to me, the concept of a water bill is very alien,
Really?
I don't, never had to deal with that. Like that's one of them city problems that people have is a water meter and everything.
You're on a lake. You don't got to worry about water.
No, see, that's the other thing. A lot of people with their sprinkler systems, they just run a line down to the lake and, suck it up that way. So, I mean, there are a lot of positives to lake life. Don't get me wrong. But, one of them is that I don't feel the need to have the perfect lawn. We have a perfectly good, if you had a cabin up on a lake, you'd have the lawn that goes along with it. And I'm very happy with it. We've got all kinds of great landscaping. My God, the landscaping that Sherry's been working on over the years. She comes to get me as I'm watching the Brewers game last night, and we'll get to that in a second. She's like, you got to see this. And I don't remember what kind of flowers they were. I'm sure she told me. And
In one
I'm
ear, out the
sure.
other.
Well, husbands do that
Yeah.
sometimes. And
Selective.
she said, look at the bees. And at first you see 4, 5, 6 bees on this patch of flowers. Patch of flowers about 5 feet by 5 feet square, roughly, in that part of the landscaping.
Yeah.
And then you kind of refocus your eyes, and there have to be 100 honeybees
Oh my God.
on there just doing their thing. I mean, so many of them. We have the happiest pollinators on Lake Wissota right now because the way that she set up the landscaping is that different things bloom at different times
Okay.
of the summer. So all summer long, spring and summer long, at some point, something is last week it was the hydrangeas.
Mhm.
I mean, they looked like a 4th of July fireworks display. These hydrangeas had blossomed so big.
Yeah.
We had the lilacs before that, and we had bridal wreaths and all that. And these flowers are blooming late, and the bees are just soaking it up.
Oh,
So, so before we get people thinking like my lawn looks like something out of the Addams Family, it does not. It's perfectly good. We mow it regularly. It is a perfectly fine lawn. It's just that the landscaping and the flowers that Sherry has added
yeah.
is what really sets it apart.
So,
So
Sherry's doing the heavy lifting between the two of you, is what I'm hearing.
that's been true for 40 years now. Yes.
Okay.
That's a very fair statement. Because I mean, look, priorities. The Cubs at Brewers, they were on the TV,
Yeah, that's
I
true.
mean, things have to get done.
That's a high priority.
While I'm doing the dishes and things like that. And it was a little tough watching the Brewers lose again to the Cubs 4-3. The Brewers now have a 3-game losing streak. They have not had many of those this season. And I don't know, Jacob Mizorowski. I don't know. Those first couple of games, I mean, he got put on the all-star roster. He was looking like the next big thing, and now he looks like a Fabergé egg, just very fragile. I mean, not at first. He retired the first 6 batters in a row.
Yeah, and then he
Okay?
recovered too.
And he recovered, yeah. But he then walked the first 3 batters in the 3rd inning. Walked the first 3 batters, bases loaded. So here comes Michael Busch. The count gets up to 3 balls and 1 strike. So you know what, Mizorowski has to put one right down the middle. Michael Busch knows it and drives it into the gap in left center field. It clears the bases. The Cubs go up 3-1, and the Brewers try to come back, but ultimately fall short by a score of 4-3. Colin Ray, the former Brewer, gave up only 3 hits to the Brewer hitters through 6 innings. So now the Cubs have improved to 7-5 against the Brewers, so that even if the Brewers win this afternoon, the Cubs will still have the season series tiebreaker. But as for that game this afternoon, finally, the 5th and final game in 4 days at Wrigley Field. The pregame coverage will begin at 12:45 this afternoon on several civic media stations around Wisconsin. And then there's no rest. There's no day off. It's right back up to American Family Field for a series against the San Francisco Giants starting tomorrow evening and through the weekend. San Francisco for 3 games. And then Arizona comes to town, and the D-backs will play the Brewers for 4 games next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday nights, and Thursday afternoon. So, this 5-game stretch was rough, but it is only the beginning. Got to come home and hope that some home cooking turns things around.
Yeah, I think so. I think that this is the most glad I've ever been to be done with a road trip and headed home.
Yeah, without a doubt. So we'll talk about that list of lieutenant governors. We'll see what you know. But first, Cherita Booker is going to tell us about things going on this weekend from the heart of America's up north. Thanks for making this the place to spend part of your Thursday mornings. I'm Pat Kreitlow. This is the Civic Media Radio Network.
You're listening to Civic Media. Stay up to date on the latest news and information for your local community and Wisconsin by signing up for our free email newsletter. Visit civicmedia.us/email to get started.
All right, it's time to get the handle on what is happening this weekend for some of the events, large and small, around Wisconsin this weekend with our social media manager, Cherita Booker. Cherita, hi, how are you?
Good, Pat. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Getting ready for the weekend here, and we're going to start like happens a lot because the Summerfest grounds, the festival grounds in Milwaukee, They have so many different festivals throughout the course of every summer. And this weekend, it's Mexican Fiesta.
Yep, Mexican Fiesta kicks off Friday and it'll run through Sunday at the Summerfest grounds. There will be tons of live music performances, and some of those headliners include Ray Mix, Leela Downs, Luis Angel, Mariachi Reina de Los Angeles, and Julio Caesar. The Cultural Pavilion will display an expedition of Mexican arts and crafts from more than 150 artisans coming from different states of Mexico. There will be a Dia de los Muertos parade Friday at 8 p.m. and a vintage and custom car and motorcycle show Saturday from 1 to 6. And last but definitely not least, there will be tons of food to choose from, authentic Mexican cuisine, as well as tequila tastings. General admission tickets are $20 online and $25 at the gate, and children under 8 are free. And if you want more information or to buy your tickets ahead of time, visit mexicanfiesta.org.com. I'm sorry, mexicanfiesta.org.
MexicanFiesta.org. Got it. And let me say again, and I know sometimes we talk a little too much about fine alcohol for an early morning show, but when you talk about tequila tasting and people go, oh, that thing with the lime and the salt, it just burns so much. I'm just here to remind you, the high-end stuff, you don't go through all that. You just get to sip it, and it's good. Same goes for a lot of those things. You pay for it, don't get me wrong. So when you hear tequila tasting, remember there will be different kinds. And if it's a tasting, you don't have to buy a whole bottle. Just take a little sample and see if it's something that you like. Wait, weren't you the one telling me you're a tequila drinker?
I am.
What am I doing here? You give them some words of advice about a tequila tasting.
Yes, honestly, I feel like the more expensive, the smoother it goes down.
Yeah.
But my favorite is Don Julio 1942, and that bottle's like over $100. So that's something you would not take a lot of right away. So
no, I would not make a nightly old fashioned with that. No, I would not. Though I will say I have had tequila old fashions. Again, with the good stuff, so good. Yes. In fact, if you're ever up in Eau Claire, head to the Lakely at the Oxbow Hotel. They make a Oaxaca old fashioned that is, it's perfect. It really is. So
I didn't even know that was a thing.
It is, yes. So give that a try. Put a little Wisconsin twist on one of your favorite beverages there. All right, so let's move from Mexican Fiesta. Oh, I like your next choice. People going, oh, you guys always talk about Milwaukee. Fine. Let's go on up to Cumberland, boys and girls, because it's Rutabaga Fest time.
Yep, and it's their 93rd annual Rutabaga Festival, and that'll run today through Sunday. There will be deep fried rutabaga fries, rutabaga mash, and other creative takes on the veggie. The event will feature a hot pepper eating contest, a fun run, a beanbag tournament, carnival rides, a kids tractor pedal pull, and a craft fair. There will also be live music with performances by Maiden Dixies, which is tonight, Wicked Garden on Friday, and Tandy Blue on Saturday, as well as Rafe Carlson. And if you're wondering why rutabaga, like me, here's a little history on that. Cumberland earned the nickname Rutabaga Capital of the World because in the early and mid-1900s, its sandy soil and cool climate made it ideal for rutabaga farming. The crop was grown on a large scale and shipped nationwide and became central to the town's farming identity and economy. But for more information on this event, visit cumberlandchamberwi.com.
And for folks that have never been there, it's in Barron County. It's about 20 minutes west of Rice Lake. And, of course, Barron County, I mean, Chris Cruzy is one of the more popular folks that has ever come out of Barron County. Always puts on a good show. So if you're anywhere in northwest Wisconsin, you might want to consider a trek to Cumberland for Rutabaga Festival. There, we got that on there. Now, Cherita really got me on this one. I saw that it is UFA Championship weekend. And I was like, are we talking about Ultimate Fighting? We are not. We are not. What are we talking about?
Ultimate Frisbee.
Ultimate Frisbee time. Of course. Tell us more.
So that's kicking off in Madison Friday and Saturday. There will be 2 semifinal games featuring the 4 UFA Division Championships that include Atlanta Hustle, Boston Glory, Minnesota Wind Chill, and Salt Lake Shred. Saturday morning will start with 2 youth clinics, followed by History in the Making, which is the very first all-star game between the Western Ultimate League and the Premier Ultimate League, which is the top women's and non-binary professional leagues in the world. The weekend will wrap up Saturday night with the 2025 UFA Championship game, as well as the Pabst Light post-game party. Single day tickets start at $15 and weekend passes start at $25. So for more information or to grab your tickets, visit watchufa.com.
All right, here's what I got off their website. Ultimate Frisbee is on a field 80 yards long. The end zones are 20 yards long. Ultimate Frisbee is 7 players to a side. You score much like football or rugby to get the Frisbee in the other team's end zone. Unlike football and rugby, you can't run with your Frisbee. So it's a lot of this back and forth without it being, intercepted, basically. I think I would have really enjoyed this as a younger person.
Me too. Like, I'll play Frisbee with my kids, but obviously it's not that serious for us.
List of other fairs to tell you about. The Central Wisconsin State Fair, of course, is going on in Marshfield through Sunday. The Manitowoc County Fair, the Wapaka County Fair. Now, those ones started yesterday. Today, the Adams County Fair, the Burnett County Fair, Marinette County, Oconto County, and Price County. Those county fairs all start today. The Florence County State Fair, little tiny Florence County, way up north, their county fair begins tomorrow. And from over at travelwisconsin.com, we learned there are things like the Blanchardville Cruise In today, the Medford Park Fest, Mason Concert in the Corn, that's way up on your way to Ashland, Loyal Corn Fest, we've talked about that in Clark County, and Tigerton Lumberjack Days, which Rob has mentioned several times, and in Platteville, the Chalk and Cheese Festival coming up on Saturday. So with all of this, you got no excuse to park yourself on the couch this weekend. Cherita Booker, thanks as always for getting our weekend started with this list of events. Hope you have a great day.
You too, Pat.
We'll be back right after this. You're Up North. Dan Shafer from the Recombobulation area, who is working on a new column, and I like how you describe the column because it really describes the political feel right now. How do you describe the column?
So I put out a call for a mailbag column before I went on vacation, and just so happened that pretty much all of the questions that people sent me were about one topic, were about the governor's race for next year. I think, might have something to do with the column that I wrote earlier this summer, perhaps. But a lot of interest, I think, is certainly among Recombobulation area readers. So I characterize it as my too early assessment, my too early breakdown of the field for governor, both on the Democratic side and on the Republican side.
Because it is. I mean, by our own admission, it's way too early for this. But we also know, as we learned from the presidential race last year, it's possible for these things to start too late. So, you'd almost rather be in a place, especially if you're Sarah Rodriguez, this is a good place to be right now. I mean, David Crawley, the Milwaukee County executive, has talked about jumping in, but he hasn't yet. Senator Kelda Royce has talked about jumping in, but she hasn't officially yet. No other Republicans have jumped in than the two who are relative unknowns across, most of the state of Wisconsin. So, if you're happy if you're Sarah Rodriguez, Lieutenant Governor, I think you're moderately happy if you're Tom Tiffany, because, again, I don't think he actually wants to run for governor, but maybe is now feeling the pressure given the public opinion polling, which, by the way, I think is just based on name ID, not any kind of love for the guy.
Yeah, I think it certainly seems like he's running, right? Like I was out of town for much of it, but I saw some of the social media stuff that he was doing at Wisconsin State Fair and all of that. And that's the type of thing you're going to do if you're running as a statewide candidate. It seems like he's probably headed in that direction. And I think the main thing on the Republican side is a Trump endorsement. Like there was this poll that the Daily Caller put out that showed Tiffany at the top of the field with 40% to somewhere between 10 and 15% for Berrien and Showman. And then they said if Tiffany were to get a Trump endorsement, it was something like 60-some% of the Republican voters would back Tiffany. So I think the whole thing on the right for their gubernatorial primary is a Trump endorsement. That's the whole ball game.
there are already 3 Democrats in Wisconsin's 3rd congressional district who are itching to run against Derek Van Orden. And for one of those candidates, Becca Cook, who was the nominee last time around for the Democrats against Derek Van Orden, she's already getting some big name help from other members of Congress who are coming into western and central Wisconsin.
Yeah, I am fascinated by the Rebecca Cook campaign right now. I think she's running such an interesting race, and I think she has this event coming up this weekend in Viroqua with Bernie Sanders. She just had an event last weekend, or maybe yesterday, I forget, I don't know the exact timing here, with the newest Michigan Senator, Alyssa Slotkin. She's been endorsed by the Blue Dogs. She was at this centrist think tank convention a couple weeks ago. So if you're looking for somebody who's actually approaching the Democratic Party wanting to have a big tent with lots of different voices for representing lots of different, kind of groups and constituencies and whatever it might be. I think what Cook is doing right now with this is really interesting. And I think with Sanders in particular, we've kind of reached this moment now where, Bernie Sanders, maybe in 2015 when he was coming on the scene as running for president as a Democratic Socialist, and the way that people had reacted to that at the time, I don't think people have the same kinds of negative or wary or divisive reactions to Sanders that maybe they once did. We're seeing in the New York mayor's race, even Andrew Cuomo is trying to campaign in certain ways to promote, a connection to Bernie Sanders or a piece of legislation that he signed. Obviously, Sanders has not endorsed Cuomo or endorsed Mamdani in that race. But it is very interesting to see the approach that Cook is taking. And really, if we're talking about Democrats needing to kind of rebuild that big tent, which is something that I've talked about a lot since the 2024 election, I think this is what it looks like. I think this is inviting people from all across the ideological spectrum to come campaign. And I'm really fascinated to see how the rest of her campaign plays out in the race to unseat Derek Van Orden.
I lost track of how many times you said either interesting or fascinating, because look, let's call it what it is. The whole reason there are 3 Democratic candidates in this race already is that there are folks who believe that Becca Cook has been too close to the Blue Dogs, has been too close to, a moderate position when there are progressives and liberals in that district that want to be to stake a position more in line with Bernie Sanders. And yet here's Bernie Sanders now campaigning with Becca Cook. I mean, Becca has been approached by me and by other shows at Civic Media to come talk to us. She has declined those invitations. And I think perhaps it's, again, to keep up this appearance of being moderate, not beholden to the party machinery. There are definitely establishment Democrats that have preferred, either Emily Berge or Laura Benjamin, who are already in the race, which is, again, here's that word, fascinating, that Bernie Sanders is looking at this and embracing Becca Cook's candidacy. I don't know if it's a left versus center thing or if it's more of an electability thing. Has Bernie Sanders and others taken a look at the field and said, well, there may be other Democrats, but they believe that Becca Cook, as the last nominee who came close, is the one who's more electable, and we won't worry about her more moderate positions.
Right, and I do think the way she's running as really emphasizing kind of her working class background is certainly an extension in a certain way of kind of like Bernie Sanders progressivism. It might not be, this is the social democratic socialism or whatever you want to characterize it as. But I think that the divide in the Democratic Party is less of this progressive versus moderate that we saw maybe 10 years ago, certainly animated in that primary between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. I feel like the divide in the Democratic Party right now is almost on action versus inaction or something along those lines, or focusing on the working class versus focusing on more neoliberal friendly corporate interest or whatever buzzwords you want to throw in there for that kind of thing. And I think even if Cook has expressed more moderate views on certain things over the years, I do think the working class connection that she has can be seen as an extension of a Bernie Sanders style of leadership.
but she had a campaign ad last year where she literally was standing in the middle of the road with a drone shot and making the case for somebody who was moderate. And for people who are closer to the far left of the party, that was a maddening image of, are you going to fight for us, or are you just going to be squishy in the middle? But for that 3rd congressional district, as Ron Kine knew as a Democrat and as Steve Gunderson knew as a Republican before him, that middle of the road is quite often the only way that road leads you to Congress.
That's right. And, it's about winning, right?
Right.
You've got to, at the end of the day, you can have all the purity tests that you want, but if you don't win, it's not going to matter. So I think, Cook outran expectations. I mean, we have to consider that piece of it as well. The fact that she outran, not only Kamala Harris, but Tammy Baldwin, who did pretty well for a Democrat in Western Wisconsin in that 3rd congressional district, and for Cook to have better numbers than each of them. I think part of that is, because Derek Van Orden is a weak candidate, but I think also it has something to do with the campaign that Cook is running, and I think what she's doing right now, I'm going to say it again, it's very fascinating.
Dan Shafer talking to us from the Recombobulation Area. You can sign up for his newsletter at therecombobulationarea.news. We visit with him live on Tuesday mornings at 8:30 and play it back a little later. Excerpts like that one for you there. And of course, the best way to catch anything in its entirety, if you can't listen to us live, would be to pod this program. Head over to Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe or follow Mornings with Pat Kreitlow, powered by Up North News. And that way you never miss a thing. I mentioned earlier that Lieutenant Governor candidate Sarah Godlewski will be joining us about 7:30. And I asked, what do you know about lieutenant governors? And I just wanted to see, again, for those of us who are wonks, we can rattle these things off in our sleep, but others not so much. Who was Tommy Thompson's lieutenant governor? And some of these you're going to go, oh, of course, Scott McCallum, who later became governor himself when Tommy moved to the George W. Bush cabinet. And then for a time, Scott McCallum had a lieutenant governor, Margaret Farrow. And then Jim Doyle became governor. A lot of folks on the Democratic side still remember Barbara Lawton, still think very fondly of her. Scott Walker, do you remember his lieutenant governor? That was Rebecca Kleefish. And then Tony Evers in his first term had Mandela Barnes as lieutenant governor, who then decided instead of running along with Evers for re-election, he was going to run unsuccessfully for U.S. Senate. And so we needed a new lieutenant governor, and that's when Sarah Rodriguez stepped up and ran and is serving as the current lieutenant governor. Because again, here in Wisconsin, you don't run as a ticket. And so the person who wins the governor's primary is on the ticket with whoever wins the lieutenant governor primary. And sometimes those folks are in sync and sometimes they are not, but it's not their call to make. It is up to the voters, and we have wide open races for governor and lieutenant governor next year. Governor Tony Evers is jumping right into changing the way things are done at the state capitol after a state Supreme Court, now controlled by progressives, struck down a way that Republicans in the legislature had been obstructing the way that he does his job. And you'd have to go back a few weeks now for me to explain this very, very unknown but powerful committee in the legislature called the Joint Committee for the Review of Administrative Rules, or JCRAR, something that I'd served on, which was supposed to be a check on a governor's power, because when you pass a bill into law, that bill can't write out everything that might be needed to make that law take effect. That's what rules are called. And executive branch agencies, the DNR, the Department of Transportation, whatever, they write the rules that put these laws into effect. And the legislature, using that committee, had been taking it upon themselves to essentially veto or needlessly delay the rules that anybody from the Evers administration was writing. And again, it wasn't so much a check on governors anymore as it was an obstruction. And this state Supreme Court looked at that and said, nope, that is not a constitutional way for legislatures to act. You already passed the bill into law. Once you pass the bill into law, the executive branch, through their agencies and through their governor, they get the opportunity to write the rules as they see fit. Well, Governor Evers is now moving forward on policies as written here by Jesse Aupoint in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel to have some of these rules put in place without legislative approval. He has sent a letter to members of his cabinet asking them to submit administrative rules to the Legislative Reference Bureau to be published and implemented, basically bypass the legislature. Evers had said previously that, quote, no small group of lawmakers should have the sole power to stymie the work of state government and go unchecked. And so Evers is not only for that one case that the court case was about, but for other matters involving rules that help implement state law. He's going directly to having those rules published and bypassing the joint committee. Could that set up problems later, say with a Republican governor and a Democratic legislature? Perhaps. But for now, the impediment put up unnecessarily by a Republican legislature has been removed, that kind of abuse of its power. Today's history lesson is next. You're Up North.
You're listening to Civic Media. Find the latest news, information, and archives of all your favorite shows on the Civic Media website, civicmedia.us.
Think of your fellow man, lend him a helping hand, put a little love in your heart.
That is Jackie DeShannon, who is 84 years old today, singer, songwriter. As a singer, she had that, Put a Little Love in Your Heart. She had What the World Needs Now is Love, Sweet Love. But her songwriting wasn't always that light and breezy. For example, it was Jackie DeShannon who wrote Betty Davis Eyes for Kim Carnes back in the 1980s. Jackie DeShannon, 84 years old today. Actress Kim Cattrall from Sex and the City. She is 69 years old today. Former quarterback for the Bears and, yeah, even the Packers and the Vikings too, right? Jim McMahon. He's 66 years old today. Oh, look who's a special birthday boy today, Parker. It's Craig Counsell. Craig Counsell turns 55 years old today. What a nice present it would be if we could hand him a big old L this afternoon.
That's true. You know, there's a lot of animosity for Craig Counsell in Milwaukee.
Yes.
I'm okay with him. After he's done being the Cubs manager, I will love him again.
After he's done being the Cubs manager. Here's the thing that people go, well, if you were offered a contract to be the richest manager in baseball, the highest paid manager in baseball, you'd take it even if it was from the Cubs. Yeah. My position would be, no, he was wanted by the Mets and several other teams. And, you know, even if it wasn't the highest, he was going to be one of the highest paid managers. He was going to be fine regardless. So sure. I'm on the side of folks that are going to hold that against him. I just am. I think that was you could have made better choices, Craigers. That's all I'm saying. But happy birthday, 55 today. Yeah. Race car driver Paul Menard is 45 years old today. Hey, the Winklevoss twins have a birthday today. Cam and Tyler Winklevoss are 44 years old today. They are the ones who co-founded Connect U, which they say Mark Zuckerberg ripped off to create Facebook. They are now big into the Gemini crypto exchange, and they have already given $1 million between them to Bill Berrien, the businessman running for governor on the Republican side here in the state of Wisconsin. Olympic sprinter and champion Usain Bolt is 39 years old today.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, Usain Bolt, 39, he can still beat you in a race. He'll still beat you in a race when he's 99. I mean, I remember watching some of those races, and it was Secretariat-esque in his speed that he has. It's just unbelievable. Let's see. Roger put up on Facebook a couple of notes here that Jean Dolores Schmidt, better known as Sister Jean, chaplain for the men's basketball team at Loyola University in Chicago, turns 106 today.
Wow.
So happy birthday to Sister Jean, 106 years old today. This is also the anniversary of the birth of the late Harold Reed, who was the bass singer for the Statler Brothers. He'd been born 86 years ago. The soundtrack to the hit romantic comedy Sleepless in Seattle topped the album charts this week in 1993.
It's so important to make someone happy. Make just someone happy.
I will always claim that every man has one rom-com that, as much as we make fun of the genre, that it's your go-to rom-com. For me, it's Sleepless in Seattle. Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan, but especially this soundtrack. I mean, come on, it's got Jimmy Durante on it here. What more could you want? It's a great soundtrack.
Yeah.
From 1993. It was the number one album this week, 32 years ago. This is the anniversary of the birth of the late country singing legend Kenny Rogers, born this day in 1938.
That talks you into staying where you are. Love will turn you around, turn you around.
On this day in 1959, President Eisenhower signed the executive order that made Hawaii the 50th state in the Union. The late sportscasting legend Jack Buck was born on this day in 1924. Now, most folks remember him for his 1988 World Series call of Kirk Gibson hitting a home run, and he yells, "I don't believe what I just saw." But, of course, anybody close to Minnesota Twins territory remembers Kirby Puckett's home run closing out Game 6.
Into deep left center for Mitchell, and we'll see you tomorrow night.
Still chills. Every Twins fan gets chills here, and we'll see you tomorrow night. There will be a Game 7 after all. Singer Casey Musgraves is 37 years old today.
Hold tight to your umbrella. Well, darling, I'm just trying to tell you that there's always been a rainbow hanging over your head.
And one more. Count Basie was born this day in 1904. Count Basie passed away in 1984. And although I always associate his song April in Paris with this great scene out of Blazing Saddles, it is a song that stands on its own just fine. Here's a little April in Paris from Count Basie.
I'm digging.
Isn't it great? I just love this one. This is Brazilian Blowout Day, a celebration that commemorates the well-known hair straightening procedure. Getting a Brazilian blowout will keep your hair silky throughout the summer. When done correctly, it will keep your hair from frizzing while maintaining its natural smoothness. The stuff I learn in this segment.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. This is National Spumoni Day, an Italian ice cream treat that incorporates cream and fruit and nuts. Never had it. Don't know that I ever will.
Nope.
And let's see. And then we've got to tell you that after the news, we'll get the updated forecast from meteorologist Brittany Merlot. And then also in our next hour, we're going to talk to Sarah Godlewski, Wisconsin Secretary of State, who is now running for lieutenant governor. And then tomorrow, we'll be talking to Dr. Jill McMullen of Toma, who was recently interviewed by Pete Buttigieg. I'm Pat Kreitlow. This is the Civic Media Radio Network.
The national news cycle never stops, but it can be hard to find news about your local community. Civic Media is dedicated to providing quality local and state news coverage across Wisconsin. With the Civic Media app, you can get notifications about local stories that matter to you and your community. Find the free Civic Media app in your phone's app store and choose notifications from the menu to tell us what kind of news you want to hear about.